Okay, good evening, and welcome to the Kehilah of Riverdale Living Room Limud. And thank you to our hosts. So we're going to study the third chapter of Hilchot Talmud Torah, the laws of Torah study, in Maimonides' Sefer HaMadah, Book of Cognition. So we've talked last week about education, about teaching the young. And if you recall the way Rambam discussed the obligation to study in the very first chapter, there is an obligation to teach, but there's also an obligation to study on your own. And when you grow up, even though you may think you're educated, there is a constant obligation to study Torah. So having talked about educating the young in the previous chapter, he's now going to talk about the importance of study when you are grown up. It's a never-ending task. So that's really the theme of the whole chapter, and Rambam is going to say a bunch of things which are based on Ma'amarei Chazal, utterances of our sages, but of course he will put them in his own way and organize them to make some point. So the first halacha says, B'shlosha kasarim nichtaru Yisrael. With 3 crowns was Israel crowned. Keser Torah, Keser Kahuna, and Keser Malchus. The crown of the Torah, the crown of the priesthood, and the crown of sovereignty, or of the kingdom, political crown. Keser Kahuna Zachabo Aaron. You're not going to be able to go and take the crown of priesthood unless you inherit it, because Aaron already got it. That one's taken, and it's inherited by descent. As it says in Bamidbar in Numbers, and it shall be to him and to his seed after him the covenant of an everlasting priesthood. So that's already taken. Kesem Malchus Zachabo David. The political crown is also taken. David acquired it. And it says in Tehillim, in the book of Psalms, Zaro li olam yihyeh v'chisok hashemesh negdi. His seed shall endure forever, and his throne like the sun before me. So we have the idea that the Davidic monarchy is permanent. And of course that we don't have it now, but it lasted even after the kingdom. There was still the Reish Galusa, the head of the exile, who was of Davidic descent. So that one's taken as well. So if you're looking for something to adorn yourself with, there's one left. Unfortunately, still available. Keser Torah, Hari Munach v'Omeid Umuchan L'Kol Yisrael. The crown of Torah is sitting there waiting for all of Israel, and it's available. Shne'emah Torah tziva lanu Moshe mo rasha Kehilas Yaakov. Because it says in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, Moshe commanded to us the Torah, and it's an inheritance for the whole congregation of Jacob. Kol misha yirtzi yavo v'yitzol. Anybody who wants it should come and take it. Shema tomasha osom haksarim gedolim mikaseh Torah. But maybe you'll say, oh well, that's all very well, but the other 2 crowns are greater. That's still not fair. It's unjust. Harehu omer bi malachim yimlochu v'rozdim yichokaku tzedek. It says in the book of Proverbs, through me, kings reign and princes decree justice. Through me, princes rule. And yasoru. Through me, princes rule. Halamarata. So we learn from there. Shekesa Torah gadol mishneim. That assuming that the me in question is the Torah, that the Torah is speaking, means that it's in virtue of the Torah that the other 2 crowns are meaningful at all. There wouldn't be a priesthood, and there wouldn't be a kingdom of dynasty of David without the Torah, which really is what makes the Jewish people what it is. So therefore, we see that the crown of Torah is in fact greater than the other 2, because it is the source of their value. And I think that's an important notion, which we're going to come back to in the third halacha, which is that it's the idea of that one thing can be the source of value of something else. Yes?
I'm trying to conceptualize the third one, which is the Keter Torah, right? And I'm saying I understood the Kohanim issue. You know, Aaron, obviously, that's Keter. What do you say? Keter,
Kahuna.
I'm sorry, Keter Kuna. And
Yes.
you know, this is because it existed when I guess the Rambam wrote that.
Yes.
I mean, we already after that fact.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe the last Keter, which he's looking for, maybe it's the Sanhedrin. Maybe it's you know, I mean, it's like it's an entity that carried a certain mission or whatever you call that.
Yeah.
I'm saying who carried the mission of Limud Torah during the generations.
Right. It's a good point. And I think you're right that there have been times when the crown of Torah was invested in a particular institutional arrangement. However, just as the kahuna, the priesthood, continues without the temple, and the Davidic dynasty continues without the throne, so too the Torah royalty can continue without the Sanhedrin. And
So maybe the Rambam wants to take that credit. Maybe that's the reason he said everybody can take it. Oh, I'm taking it now.
Well,
because he was known, right? I mean, isn't it one of the things that about him that he sort of wanted to be known as, you know, the Mishnah Torah, like he's I'm just speculating, but
right. Well, I think he's actually something of a subversive when it comes to the institutions of his day, because there were authorities, the Gaonim, as they were known. It's hard to translate, but something like their eminences or geniuses who were the heads of the yeshiva vot of Bavel in Eretz Israel, Babylonia in the land of Israel, and they had a certain kind of institutional authority, and he didn't think much of them, and he argued with them. And the point of the book of the Mishnah Torah is to spread the knowledge as far as possible, and I think this what he's talking about here. It fits with that. He believes that the Torah belongs to everybody, and he wants to make it available. You don't have to go to the Gaonim and ask questions unless they're a specialist in certain things. Otherwise, you can look it up in the Mishnah Torah.
Oh, so that's interesting. So you don't have to go to an institution. You can do it.
Yes.
That's
right. And then this is a book that was...
everybody can do a Keter Torah.
That's right. Although, it's still true that those who are preeminent in their study and teaching of Torah merit a special respect. But I don't know whether it's institutional respect necessarily. So I think to bring this home, in the second halacha he says, Amru Chachamim, Mamzer Talmid Chacham, Kodem Lechoin Gadol Am Haaretz. So suppose you have the person who is of the greatest lineage, who is the high priest. So not only a priest, but the high priest. Right? He usually came from a very distinguished family, but an ignoramus, doesn't know anything about Torah. On the other hand, you have a great scholar who is of shameful descent, someone of illegitimate birth. The Torah scholar takes precedence. Shneimar, as it says in Mishnah in the book of Proverbs, Yikorahi mipninim, it is more precious than rubies. Mikohen gadol shenichnas lifnei v'lifnim. So it understands it to the sages understood this to mean paninim, not so much rubies as you would literally translate, but from those who go into the interior of the temple. The Torah is more important than this access to the Holy of Holies. And I think it's deliberately put that way. Now, of course, there is a certain irony here, which I can't help but remark upon. It is true that lineage and descent are often valued among Torah scholars.
I was exactly
and I think, on the one hand, I understand it. I grew up in a place with some very major families who now we're into, I think, the third or fourth generation of them of certain families being the Rosh Yeshiva and so on. Now, the individuals may indeed merit it, so that's fine. And I think sometimes there is something that comes with that, not so much genetic as having been brought up in a certain home with an incredible attention to Torah study, and having been brought up with a certain example, and having parents who focus on that. So I think that is possible. At the same time, the respect is not merited by the descent alone. The Rambam's own family, for many generations after him, were considered the leaders of Egyptian Jewry. But as I say, I think from his point of view, had he known about it, he might have said that if they merit it, then good. I mean, we see that the sons of Moshe do not succeed him.
I was going to use that beautiful sentence here in conversion issues. I mean, because we don't accept in halachic conversion somebody who really, let's say, learns the Torah and does all of that, but if he does not, but if he's a goy, right, he cannot become automatically Jewish, right? Although let's say he's a Talmid Chacham on his own right.
Yes.
Right, but he still has to go through that. Right, he still has to do other things.
Yes.
So
he has to show his
Right,
acceptance.
he has to, whatever. I mean,
yeah.
He has to go
Okay.
through the process.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Although he might,
Yes.
So, I guess it bothers me personally because of all the conversion issues between what's going on.
Okay. Yes.
Anyway.
Okay. So now we get on something that I think is a little bit more complex. The third halacha. Ein lecha mitzvah b'chol ha-mitzvahs kulan. Of all of the precepts, of all of the commandments, none of them is equal to the study of Torah. Shehi shkula keneged Talmud Torah. Ella Talmud Torah keneged kol ha-mitzvahs kulan. Rather, the value of Talmud Torah is equivalent to that of all of the mitzvahs. Shah Talmud mevili de ma'aseh. Because study brings you to performance or practice. Therefore, in every situation, Talmud study takes precedence over action. Now, this is less simple and straightforward than it might seem. And I think we need to understand what is the point of the final sentence here. Therefore, Talmud or study takes precedence over action or performance in every situation. So I think we need to look at the Talmudic passage, the Gemara in Baba Kama, that is the main basis for what the Rambam is saying here. So the context is that they're talking about Chizkiyahu HaMelech, King Hezekiah, and the verse in Divrei Hayamim in the second book of Chronicles says that they afforded him honor in his death. So Chizkiyahu did special things, and he was given special honor. And the question in the Gemara is, what was the special honor that he got? Several different things are suggested, and in each case you say, well, that's not such a big deal because we do that for any scholar. So I'm going to sort of take a bit from the middle of that discussion. Amar Rabba bar bar Chana, Hava azilna b'hadei Rabbi Yochanan. Rabba bar bar Chana said, I was once walking along with Rabbi Yochanan, the Mishal Shmaita, and I wanted to ask him about this tradition. What did it mean? Ki hava ayal lebeis hakisei, and then Rabbi Yochanan had to go to the bathroom. So they paused, and he went to the bathroom. And whenever that happened, v'hava be'ena minei milsa, and then I would ask him something as soon as he came out. Right? Lo pashit lon, he wouldn't answer. Ad damasha yadeh, until he had washed his hands. Umanach tefillin, he put his tefillin back on. So presumably in those days they wore tefillin all day, but of course you have to take them off going to the bathroom. So he must have taken them off, and then he goes and does what he needs to do, and he comes back, and they're immediately showering him with questions. So he's not saying anything yet. And he washes his hands and he puts his tefillin back on. Now, the interesting part is not that he washed his hands, that's obvious, but that he put his tefillin on before answering the question. That's really the issue. because that's a situation where you have what looks like a practice prior to the study of Torah. Yes. So we're going to try to understand what's going on. And then he made a bracha, he made a blessing, v'hada amalon, and then he resumed and started talking to us again. Afilu kayam amrinan. And what he said was, with regard to the honor given to Chizkiyahu Melech, nowadays we say that kayam, a person, when a great sage dies, we put a Sefer Torah by the body. This is coming from earlier in the Gemara, and we say this person fulfilled everything that was in this Torah. Right? So nowadays we even say that about people as well. But limeid lo amrinan. But we don't say that that he taught what was written in this Torah. So that was the special thing that they did for King Chizkiyahu. So any sage would merit it being said that they fulfilled the Torah, but it's somehow a greater honor to say that he taught it. Right? So that was the unique honor that was given to Chizkiyahu Melech. Yes.
I know you explained it differently, but when I was reading this and it said, study leads to practice. Study always takes precedence over practice. Maybe I misinterpreted this, but I was saying practice means behavior.
Yes.
And there's so many people that study Torah, but their behavior isn't appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's...
Well, I think it's talking about performance of the mitzvahs is the way it would usually be understood. Right? Yeah. So the question, which has greater value? Well, study has more value. It's prioritized over the practice of the mitzvahs. And we're going to see a concrete example of that. So in the fourth halacha, although I'm going to go back to the Gemara in a minute, but in the fourth halacha, the Rambam gives you a concrete consequence of this, right? Hayal fanav asiyas mitzvah v'Talmud Torah. Suppose you had a choice to make. You could either do a mitzvah, practical fulfillment of command, or you could study Torah. Im efshel mitzvah lehiyasas al yedei acherim lo yafsik talmudo. If someone else can do the mitzvah, then you shouldn't interrupt your study. Right? Ve'im lav ya'aseh mitzvah v'yachzor letalmudo. But if it's you that has to do it, then you should interrupt and go back to your study. But that's an example. So if there's someone else who can do the mitzvah, then you should continue studying. That's the sense in which it takes precedence.
This is sort of a contradictory. In Pirkei Avot it says, if the mitzvahs are greater, what you do is greater than the learning, it's like a tree that is by the water, and the leaves will be beautiful.
Yes.
The roots will take hold, but a person who just learns or doesn't, his learning is greater than his good deeds. It's not as good as if someone has greater amount of deeds.
But that might be a little. I'm sorry. That might be a little different from what they're talking about here. Like what you were saying, is good deeds. Yeah. Here he's actually talking about Makayim the mitzvahs of the Torah. I mean, it could be an interpretation there, but here, and also could be a different Tana he's talking. But here it's very clear that we're talking about, do you want to give precedence to the actual mitzvot or not? And like when we said, the Rambam quoted, I don't know if it was last time we read it or the time before, Ilu Dvarim She'en Lahem Shiur, right? Right? The Talmud Torah Keneged Kulan, right? And even so much so, the Rambam was saying that it's not only Talmud Torah Keneged Kulan, it's not even, but it's actually, it takes precedence over. So the Rambam really, I think, is very consistent in this idea.
So the Talmud Torah takes precedence even over the good deeds.
Even over Leviat Hamet or, Hachnasat Kala.
What about against Kibud Avraham?
I mean, it's all there, right? So, absolutely correct. But the Rambam clearly is trying to push, and I suspect that there's going to be another side, another face to Rambam, which is going to be contradictory. But at least here, it seems like, yes, even Kibud Avraham, and even for the Rambam. At this state, right? Am I wrong?
No, I mean, I think that's an example of the fourth halacha. If you suppose you were studying Torah and your parent needs something, well, obviously, if you're the only one who can do it, then you should do it and stop your learning. But suppose you have a sibling who can also do it, so let them do it, and you'll continue learning if that sibling's not learning. So that's, but we need to go back to the Gemara now, right? So the way we've understood it so far, Rabbi Yochanan said that what was special in the honor given to King Hezekiah when he died was that they said that he taught. Not only that he fulfilled, but he taught. Right? Okay,
that also preserves the mitzvah, right, Paul? Because if someone is like without Talmud Torah, there's no future for being Mekayim mitzvah.
Absolutely, right.
And so, if you say that the performance of mitzvah comes first, then who is there to really teach or explain the importance of mitzvah?
Right.
And so, therefore, it like, and if you're saying Chizkiyahu because he was the Lamed, then that's why, because he taught it. That ensures the future of mitzvah observance. So the truth is, you lose mitzvah observance if you don't preserve.
Right.
Very good.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we're going to see that a few different ways to interpret this now. Right. Yeah.
I have a side question.
Okay.
So related.
Yes.
What is Torah in this sense? So I understand what we're doing right now is Talmud Torah.
Yes.
Definitely.
Right.
If I'm studying, I don't know, a critical YouTube video from Finkelstein on Tel Aviv University about Karim ala Torah, which is not always in our view, would that be Talmud Torah or not? And you're like, no, how wide can we interpret what Torah is?
Well, that's a halachic question that I don't want to answer, as a halachic.
Right.
I'm not a halachic authority, but I would say it depends at least in part on what your intention is, and not solely on what the content is. There is a specific practice of Talmud Torah which is separate from education and study. There are lots of things you can study, and the Rambam very much believes in that. Talmud Torah is a very specific discipline, and he has tried to explain in the previous section what it consists in, which is, you have to know Tanakh, you have to know the Bible, you have to know what the basic halachot are, and that's what he calls Mishnah. And then you have to study what he calls Talmud, which is the reasoning behind the mitzvot. Now, what is the study of Tanakh? If you ask me, does it matter if you're reading a more scholarly book or a more traditional book? I'm not going to decide that halachically, but I think a lot depends on whether it is part of that special practice and you intend it as part of the fulfillment of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. And I think if that's the way you intend it, then there are many things that you could do that would count as Talmud Torah.
The Rambam wouldn't put philosophy in that?
As we know, philosophy is part of Talmud. It's part of studying the reasons for things.
So if you have something like that, that's studying the reasons or like creative ideas. So.
Yes. So I don't see why other kind of study of Tanakh wouldn't qualify. But primarily, he's thinking of, when he says Mikra, he really means just reading you learn the text. But I'm sure there's a more sophisticated level of study which he would appreciate as well, and which could be incorporated into Talmud Torah. Okay, so let's go back to the Gemara, right? So Gemara continues. V'ha'amar, did not the master say, Rabbi Yochanan, that is, Gadol limud Torah shahalimud mevi lidei masa, that Torah study is great because the study of Torah leads to performance of the mitzvahs. And it seems to be that that's a problem because Rabbi Yochanan now said that that what was the most important thing was teaching more than fulfilling. But if you say that Talmud Torah is important because mevili de maaseh, it brings you to performance. It suggests that performance is what's really important. So on this way of reading it, the statement, which the Rambam also cites, that Talmud Torah brings you to performance, would suggest that Talmud Torah is instrumental. It's of instrumental value because of the consequence to which it brings you, which is the performance. But if you have, if I say the cup is valuable because it helps me to drink water, clearly it's the drinking of the water that I care about primarily. So there seems to be a contradiction, the Gemara says, in Rabbi Yochanan's view. In a different place he says that Talmud Torah is valuable because it leads to practice, suggesting practice is more powerful. Here he suggests that what was special for King Hezekiah was not that he fulfilled the mitzvahs, not the practice, but that he taught, which suggests that Torah study is more important. So now the Gemara tries to...
Is teaching an act of actually doing, fulfilling the Maaseh?
One Maaseh, but not all the others.
But
unless...
teaching.
Yeah. Okay, so the Gemara answers, Lo kasha, this is not a problem. Hala migmar hala agmurei. The statement of Rabbi Yochanan that Talmud brings you to performance is about studying on your own. Whereas the statement here that says that teaching is more important is about teaching other people. So Gemara makes a distinction. There's going to be more than one way to understand this Gemara, between studying on your own and teaching. Okay. So we're going to look at the Tosfos now, and we'll see that Rabbeinu Tam had a problem with the way I just explained the Gemara, which would be the obvious way, the straightforward way to understand it. Because that would suggest that the order of value goes, first comes learning on your own. Higher than learning on your own is fulfilling the mitzvah, practically. And higher still is teaching other people. But Rabbeinu Tam rejects that. And I think the Rambam also rejects it, which is why he ends the halacha by saying Talmud Torah always takes precedence. That is to say, it's more valuable. Whereas the straightforward reading of the Gemara would suggest that it's not more valuable than fulfilling the mitzvahs. In fact, fulfilling the mitzvahs is more valuable than study.
But you need to study first to be able to do the other.
Right, that's right. So what does that mean exactly? So I want to say there are two ways to understand that. One is chronologically. You have to study before you can do it. But I think the other, which is more important for the Rambam and for Rabbeinu Tam, is a question of what is the source of the value? Where does the value come from? In the first halacha, we saw that there are 3 crowns. The reason why the crown of Torah is more valuable, it's higher in priority, is because without Torah, there wouldn't be a Jewish people, there wouldn't be a people of Israel, and there wouldn't be a priesthood, and there wouldn't be a kingship either. Right? So that those exist only in virtue of the value of Torah. Similarly here, the idea is going to be that the value of performance itself depends on the value of Talmud Torah. The value of Talmud Torah, which is an intellectual enterprise, is the most important thing. It has to express itself in action as well. But the value of the action is derivative from the value of the intellectual enterprise. That's the way the Rambam sees it, and it's the way Rabbeinu Tam sees it as well. And I think that's consistent with everything that we've seen about the Rambam's focus on intellectual engagement. That's the highest thing. To say that we humans were created in the divine image, to say that we have intellect. And ultimately, the purpose of all the performance and the action is to help you to prioritize your intellect over your other desires. So if we look at the Tosfos, and didn't the master say that Torah study is great because it brings one to performance? Perish B'Kontras, Rashi explains Alma Maisa Adif. Therefore, we see that the performance is greater. Because, as I say, the straightforward understanding is that Talmud Torah is of instrumental value, and therefore the consequence would be greater in value than the instrument. B'kosher Rabbeinu Tam. And this was very difficult for Rabbeinu Tam. He couldn't accept this interpretation. Didn't make sense to him. To Adarabba, Mehacha Dayak, Sov Perikama de Kedushin, because we learn exactly the opposite from the very same idea at the end of the first chapter of Masechta Kiddushin, Daf Mem Amud Beis, and there it says, Limud Gadol Mimaisa, that namely study is greater than performance. So there we have the story of Rabbi Tarfon and some of the elders who were reclining or having a Suda, whatever they were doing, in the loft of the house of Nitzah in Lud. V'nisha Allah she'ela zu. And bifnehem. This very question came before them. This very question arose. Limud Gadol or Maisa Gadol? Is study greater or is performance greater? V'nimnu kulam, and they were all counted. They took a vote. We have several such cases where they took votes on various important questions. And v'amru, and they said, Limud Gadol, study is great, and it's the greatest. Shemevi lidei maisa, because it brings you to performance. But it seems like from that context, they're concluding that study is greater. So how are we to understand this statement? We must have to understand it in a non-instrumental way. It can't be just like the study is the cup and the point of the whole thing is drinking the water, right? Is the performance. There must be another way to understand this statement that Talmud Torah Mevi Lidei Maisa brings you to performance. Right? So Rabbeinu Tam is going to try and explain the Gemara in a different way. V'omer Rabbeinu Tam, and Rabbeinu Tam says, "Hoche Perusha." This is the explanation. So now he's explaining the Gemara that we read. V'ha'am amar shalimud mevi lidei maisa. Did the master not say that study brings you to performance? V'kevin she'anu omrim kayam. And since we say of a sage, he fulfilled all the commandments that are in this Torah, Harianu Omrim Shelamad. Obviously we're saying that he learned it. He couldn't have fulfilled it if he didn't learn it. Di lo shalamad heyach kayam. How could he have fulfilled it if he didn't learn it? Shalimud maybe l'dei ma'aseh, because study brings you to performance. V'lo masik adaite hashda l'chalek bein lamad l'limeid. According to Rabbeinu Tam, the Gemara does not conclude by distinguishing now between someone who between the act of teaching and the act of studying. He doesn't see it that way. That's not how he reads the text. Umeshane, rather it answers hala igmure. This one of the texts was talking about studying. Delimud vaday lo amrinon. We don't even need to say that he studied. That wouldn't be such a big honor. You say this person knew the halachas of a great sage. That's almost an insult. Of course he knew them. Of course he studied them. We know that already. So we don't say that. But right, delimud vaday lo amrinon to vaday adif. We know that's more important. Maybe it's harabim l'dei maisa kishalamdam. Rather, we say that he taught. Why? Not because studying would not be important, but because when you teach, you're not only studying, you're also teaching other people, and they are studying, and they are coming to performance as well. Right? So he does not think that performance is more important than study. It's the teaching, the spreading of Torah, which includes the study. Right? So this, in other words, I would say, study of Torah is the value source of the performance. There wouldn't be mitzvahs without study. That's the way. It's not just a practical issue, and it's not a chronological issue. Talmud Torah, not just the existence of the law, but the study of the law, is the motivating force behind the whole existence of Judaism. Judaism is an intellectual enterprise. Right? So that's why it's very different from other legal systems. There are lots of legal systems. There are religious legal systems and so on. But this particular religious legal system says that you have to study, and and that's the most important thing. You have to prioritize the intellect. Now, when you teach other people, you are spreading that idea. That includes their performance and includes their study. So that's even greater than studying on your own. Right? So he's not saying that study is instrumentally important because it leads to performance. He's saying that performance is the expression of the deeper value of intellectual activity. Now, there is another reading which it goes on to explain, which is like the original reading that we wanted to give. B'she'iltis de Rav Achai Gaon. So this is a Gaonic work that we still have in the name of Rav Achai. Lo garsinon kayam. It doesn't even have the word fulfilled in the text. They have a slightly different version of the text of the Gemara. Elagoras umanach tefillin. It says he put on his tefillin v'hada amalon, and then he started talking to us again. V'tulo, and it doesn't say any more than that in that version of text. Uparich Gemara, and in that version the Gemara asks v'heach hava manach tefillin techila kodem shehaya omer lehem hashmaitza. So how could he have put on tefillin first before he told them what the tradition was? V'halo limud gadol ma'aser. Isn't study more important than the activity? So this version focuses on what I highlighted before, which is that Rabbi Yochanan puts on his tefillin when he comes out of the bathroom before he talks to the students. Umeshane, and then the Gemara adds, says halamigmar hala igmure. One is about studying, the other is about teaching. Deligmar nafshe limud gadol shemevi lidei ma'aser. If it's about learning for yourself, then it's great because it brings you to activity or performance. But to teach to other people is not greater, according to Rav Achai's version. And that's why he put on his tefillin first. If it was about his personal study, he would have done that. He would have prioritized that over putting his tefillin on. But since it's about teaching other people, which is not the main part of the mitzvah, Rabbi Yochanan put his tefillin on first. So that's a very different reading. But I think that the Rambam's view is probably close to Rabbeinu Tam's, which is that the study of Torah is the central source of value for all of the performance of the mitzvahs. That's what they're all about. And I think that's why he says at the end of the third halacha, right, that Talmud kodem l'maaseh b'chol makom. In every respect, study takes precedence over activity, which he continues, as we already read, in the fourth halacha, where he said that if a chance came along to fulfill a mitzvah, you should stop your study only if you're the only one who can perform the mitzvah. But otherwise, you should continue to study. Because actually, it's not that Talmud Torah is important because of the performance. Rather, the performance is important because of the study. It's the other way around.
I can't help but feel that the Tosafos reading of Rabbeinu Tam, unlike Rambam, that there's a little distinction there.
Sure.
That the emphasis seems to be more on teaching, and Rambam's not doing so much on teaching. Rambam's doing more on study. That here it seems like there are two distinctions. Mm-hmm. There's yes. a limud and there's a and it right. seems like especially because of Chizkiyahu and Melech, and it seems like also it's coming after the second parak. I can't help but thinking also that the way everything is, the way you're placing this. Yeah. I don't know if this is where you're going with it, but I feel like the Rambam should have made that leap until limud, and he doesn't. And the Tosafot is actually very clearly that the limud itself is the like before you say lilmod et Torah, that's the catalyst for the Maaseh. That's the way Rashi understands it, yes. and that's the way most of us understand the Gemara. Right. But when we're talking about lilani, to teach, it seems like there's a greater emphasis, to demonstrate the accomplishment that one can be. The teaching can be a fulfillment, a catalyst for other people to perform mitzvot or even learn further. But teaching itself can further develop and deepen one's own performance and one's own whatever you want, and limud Torah.
Yeah.
So there seems like it's a hierarchy that's being emphasized here, whereas I don't see that in the Rambam, and maybe I'm missing it.
No, I think that's probably right. Rambam's not talking about teaching in this particular section.
At all.
But I think the general approach that Rambam takes to the spreading of perfection is that the more perfection you develop in yourself in some particular respect, the more it naturally will overflow to other people. And the way I would explain it in this case is that if you really study Torah, and you're not doing it, of course, for some ulterior motive, which we'll talk about, but right, you're doing it because you appreciate the value of Torah. But if you appreciate the value of Torah, you don't only appreciate it for yourself. You appreciate the value for everybody. So then, of course, you want to teach it. Why would you not want to teach it? Right? It's almost impossible not to, because everybody should share this great, valuable thing. It's not a zero-sum game where the more of it I have, the less of it you have. Or if I have it, then you can't also have it, right? It's not like that. That's part of the point about the Kesed Torah is there for anybody to take it as well. By the same token, it's a value that's accessible to everybody. And once I appreciate its value, I want people to have it. I want more and more people to have it. Which reminds me of something I saw in a very different spirit, but in the Siddur, the prayer book of Rabbi Yaakov Emden, 18th century rabbi in Altona, and he was very learned and very polemical sometimes, but he's also extremely, he'll say things that nobody else could get away with saying. He also wrote an autobiography which is very honest about himself and his own shortcomings. And he says, when he's talking about the nature of Talmud Torah, he says, people who dedicate themselves to Torah tend to be bad-tempered. He says, you can't blame them. He says, they spend their whole life basically killing themselves. It's very hard. He says, most of them don't have any money. What do you expect from them? And then he says, and by the way, he says, don't bother with having a lot of students. Write books instead. He says, if you have a lot of students, they're going to bother you and they're going to ask you questions all the time. You'll never get to write anything. But if you write the books on your own, then you'll find that lots of students read them. So that's a better way to. There's a lot of stuff like that in his account. Yes, I don't think he made much money. He had his own printing press, but I don't think he made a lot of money from it. Okay, so now we're up to halacha 5. Right. Kehilah dino shel adam, the very beginning of your judgment, right? When you're called to judgment, Eino nidun ela ala Talmud, will be for the fulfillment of the duty of studying Torah. That's the first thing you're going to be asked in the world of truth. And only later on all the other activities. Right? So that's because it takes precedence here in this world. It's the first thing you get asked about in the next world. Lefikach amru chachamim the olam yasok adam b'Torah bein lishma bein shelo lishma shemitach shelo lishma ba lishma. Therefore, the sages said a person should always occupy himself with Torah, whether it's for its own sake or for other reasons. Now, ideally, it should be for its own sake, but even if it's for other reasons, you should still do it. For the study of Torah, even when pursued from interested motives, will lead to study for its own sake. In other words, there's no other way to get there.
I don't understand this.
Okay, so
Lishma, what does Lishma means? Just to know what a Torah means.
well, okay. So there's lots of debate much later on about the meaning of Torah, Talmud Torah Lishma, what exactly that means, and it's one of the big disputes between the Hasidim and their opponents. But I don't think the Rambam has any sort of strong and controversial doctrine in mind here. He just means, are you studying it because you want to learn Torah? Or are you studying it for some other reason? Are you studying it because it's going to impress the ladies? Are you studying it because you think it's going to be professional advancement? Or what? Right? Those would be ulterior motives. No, you should be studying it because it's a valuable thing. I don't think it's anything other than that. But even if there are other reasons, you shouldn't tell people not to study. Even if you see that someone is doing it because they want advancement in some area, they should be encouraged to study with the hope that they will come to see its value in its own right, and the ulterior motives will drop away. So, I think that's all it means. And and we start with in education too, although that's not what he's talking about here, by giving children rewards. And they if you get a candy if you answer the question and so on. Obviously, you hope that they'll get beyond the stage of wanting to do it for the sake of the candy. Okay.
They should do it for intrinsic reasons rather than external.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
No,
Well,
I think what it means,
yeah.
you don't. Well, I don't think there is a reason to study. I guess
Hashem told us to learn the Torah, so we learn the Torah
We
Lishma.
have to do it. I mean, we'll benefit some, whatever the benefit is. We
Benefit
know the
could
Torah.
be-
I mean, I don't know how to. I don't know how to say. I mean, according to this, I'm not allowed to even to enjoy the Torah. Because
No, I wouldn't say
enjoy,
that.
I mean, well.
No.
I mean, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I would distinguish between enjoying something and doing it only because of the enjoyment. Those are two different things.
Okay.
There are many activities that have intrinsic value. They have value in their own right, which are also enjoyable. They don't have to be horrible. They don't have to be painful. That's fine. That's not a contradiction. But to do it only for the sake of the enjoyment is something else.
Well, what about where you said that without Torah,
Yes.
there would not be a Jewish people?
Yes.
Doesn't that have high importance?
Yes, definitely. I'd say it's not only the Torah itself as a law and a system of behavior, but the Torah as an object of study. So that's one of the things that Rambam thinks is so special about Judaism, that it focuses on this intellectual engagement so much. And as we've seen, he includes within Talmud Torah the study of philosophical matters as well. So in the sixth halacha, more about ulterior motives. Somebody whose heart prompts him to fulfill this duty, this mitzvah, this commandment properly, and to be crowned with the crown of Torah. So again, I talked about ulterior motives the way I did because of the idea of wearing a crown. Right? It sounds like something that's going to impress people. Just like the crown of the priesthood and the crown of the monarchy. Lo yasiach daita lidvarim acherim. He should not allow his mind to be diverted to other objects. V'lo yosim alibo sheyikna Torah im ha'osher v'akavod ka'achas. And he shouldn't aim at acquiring Torah as well as riches and honor at the same time. So it might be that through Torah you could acquire some other goods as well, but that shouldn't be your focus. And if you have to give up the other things, then you should be willing to do that. Right? And quoting from Pirkei Avos, from Ethics of the Fathers, Kachi darka shel Torah, this is the way of the Torah, pas b'melach tochal, eating bread with salt, mayim b'meshura tishteh, and you drink water by measure, just a little bit at a time, ve'al ha'aretz tishon, and you'll sleep on the floor, v'chayei tzar techyeh, and you'll have a hard life, but Torah ata amel, and in the Torah you'll work hard. Right, so you have to be prepared to give up material goods for the sake of this mitzvah. And he quotes further from Pirkei Avos, Lo alecha hadavar ligmor. You don't have to finish the whole thing. But at the same time, you're also not free to neglect it. If you've studied a lot of Torah, you earned a large reward. The reward is proportionate to the pains that you took. So you may have to give up material goods for the sake of Torah. There's an ultimate reward of a different kind, not in this world, but a reward for the intellectual activity.
What do you make of the switch of the word davar and malacha?
Probably there was a... Yeah.
You don't think that the concept of malacha, you don't read too much into it? Oh, okay.
I haven't looked into the textual issues, but probably he had a different version of the text of Pirkei Avos. That's what I would suspect. Seventh halacha, Shema Tomar Ad she'akabetz mamon echzav ekra. Maybe you'll say, when I've earned enough money, then I'm going to go back and study. But now I'm taking a break. Right? Ad she'ekne ma she'eni tzarich. When I've acquired what I need, ve'epne me asakai, I'll turn away from my business. Ve'echzav ekra, and then I'll go back and I'll study and I'll read. If that's the way you think, then you will never merit the crown of Torah at all. Right? So it has to be an ongoing focus. It can't be something that you say, I'll come back to in a few years. Right?
Because most likely
You won't come back.
You won't come back to it,
or
right.
you'll keep on postponing it because
Yes.
you have to do more and more and more
Right.
till you think you're ready.
Exactly.
It's
Yes.
interesting how contemporary this is. too.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
find it fascinating.
Yeah. Ela asay torascha keva u'malachtecha arai. Rather, you should make your Torah study fixed. In other words, that should be the focus of your attention, and your work should be, I would say, derivative in its value. So you work as much as you need to work, but your Torah is your main focus of concern, because that is in fitting with what we've been saying, that Talmud Torah is really the source of value of all of the other activities. And again, quoting from Pirkei Avos, from Ethics of the Fathers, "V'lo tomar l'kshevneh eshneh," you shouldn't say,
When I'll have time.
when I'll have time, I'll study. Shema lo tipaneh. Maybe you won't have time. Okay, maybe.
When I learned say Torah Keva, have a set time in the day where you learn Torah.
Right. So yeah, definitely making fixed times is important. But I think the Rambam's point here is a more sort of fundamental one, which is that it's the value of the Torah that should be the most important thing to you, the value of the Torah study. Even if you only did it for a short time a day, still, it would be as if, I've got to do all this work, and that's important, but one of the things the work allows me to do is that 1 hour of Torah study that I get to do in the evening. You know, and that's what it's all about.
That's why sometimes you hear these groups of men who learn during their lunch hour.
Yes.
They work in these offices
Right.
where
Oh,
they
yeah.
have
Yes.
a real, they can take that time,
Right. Right.
so that becomes their fixed time.
Yes.
In Detroit, there was a law office, and they hired one of the rabbis to come in during lunchtime and would teach them.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Okay, so I think we'll stop there, and we'll see next time that the Rambam is opposed to people being supported by others, unless they're very special conditions. Everybody who studies Torah should also work and not live on
Well,
charity.
that's also very contemporary, because
Yes.
people talk about this issue all the time.
Sure.
Absolutely. Studied it.
Yes, definitely. All right, so we'll do that next time. That's right. So that was it. Unless it's under special conditions. Thank you.